Evacuations are going on across Florida as Hurricane Milton continues rapidly intensifying at an unprecedented rate, now becoming the second most intense hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. In this video, we're looking at Hurricane Milton and how intense the impacts could be in Florida and what you need to do to prepare. But first, before we start, just make sure that you're prepared for this hurricane if you're in Florida, and make sure you follow all the instructions given by local officials, especially the evacuation orders, all of that. We have Hurricane Milton. The winds are up to 180 miles an hour in this latest advisory 11A. The pressure is down to 897 millibars. That's intense. It's really rare to see minimum pressure go below 900 millibars in an Atlantic hurricane. This hasn't happened in, I think, 19 years apparently, and this would actually make it the second most intense hurricane in the Gulf, besides for Hurricane Rita. So that behind Rita. Rita was 895 millibars. This is 897, and this is ahead of Allen, which was 899. Camille was 900, and Rita was 902. So this is a historic hurricane already. And then we have another disturbance off the other side of Florida. This isn't really going to do anything, but it's just gonna add to the rain, because it's already going to be raining in Florida for a really long time ahead of Milton, and then Milton just adds to that. So that's a big problem with Milton too. But yeah, Milton is headed towards Florida, especially it's actually headed towards the Tampa area. That's pretty much the worst case scenario to have happen. But the key messages for Hurricane Milton: damaging hurricane force winds and a life-threatening storm surge with destructive waves are expected across portions of the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula through tonight, because that's where it is right now. Fortunately, it's a small hurricane right now, and they're not going to get the strongest winds, but at least getting into that hurricane force wind field for a few hours. But then what gets worse is Milton is expected to grow in size and remain an extremely dangerous hurricane when it approaches the west coast of Florida on Wednesday. A large area of destructive storm surge will occur along portions of the west coast of Florida on Wednesday. This is an extremely life-threatening situation, and residents in those areas should follow advice given by local officials and evacuate immediately if told to do so. Potentially devastating hurricane-force winds are expected along portions of the west coast of Florida where a hurricane warning is in effect. Milton is forecast to remain a hurricane as it crosses the Florida peninsula, and life-threatening hurricane-force winds, especially in gusts, are expected to spread inland across a portion of the entire Florida peninsula. Preparations to protect life and property in the warning areas should be complete by Tuesday night, since tropical storm conditions are expected to begin within this area early Wednesday. Areas of heavy rainfall will impact portions of Florida today, well ahead of Milton, with heavy rainfall more directly related to the system expected later on Tuesday through Wednesday night. This rainfall will bring the risk of considerable flash urban and aerial flooding, along with the potential for moderate to major river flooding. So all of the, storm surge, flooding, wind, all of those major impacts with Hurricane Milton. This is the latest satellite image pretty much on Hurricane Milton, and it's really small. I think the eye is only a few miles wide. It's like this is a very compact hurricane, which that's part of the reason why it's been able to intensify so fast. And there's pretty much, I don't think there's any wind shear on the system at all, and so that's really helped it to rapidly intensify it. But this is at a historic rate. It went from a Category 1 to a Category 5 in 12 hours. So that's crazy. And this was the recon this morning. It really, really just exploded. The recon started off seeing a pressure of 947 millibars in their first pass. Then it went down to 943, 935, 925, and then 912 at their last pass was 912 millibars. It went down to 911 millibars, so that was, that's incredible. intensification. Like Dorian was 910 millibars, Irma was 908. So this is and now this is intensified even more, down to 897 according to the latest drop sonde from the recon that was a little bit ago. They are thinking that, you know, it could intensify a little more over the next 24 hours. It could intensify more, but hopefully between the next, you know, 36 hours, it should start weakening pretty quickly, because it will be going into more shear. And so hopefully that will weaken it down quickly, but sometimes, you know, the shear could just spread out the impacts from the system and, you know, make it more of an uneven system, but still, you know, it's going to be pretty strong. If we're already, you know, we're a high-end Category 5, you know, 180, 185 miles an hour, could potentially intensify a little more to 190. If you have pressure below 900 millibars and it's a small hurricane, there could be wind, you know, approaching 190 miles an hour with this, but hopefully after, if it goes into an eye wall replacement cycle, which some of these really intense hurricanes do, hopefully that will get it to, you know, weaken down some, but that just makes it a bigger system. So then that could actually make it harder to weaken, and it'll make the system bigger, which means, you know, the storm surge would be worse, things like that. And so, yeah, that's pretty bad. And this is headed straight for Tampa, and this is like that worst case scenario. If it were to go just north of Tampa, I think then it would be even worse than it already is. If it goes a bit further south, that would be a little better, but still bad, because it's going pretty much directly over Tampa. And this is, you know, there's a lot of people in this area, but, you know, if, you know, this is going all the way across Florida, you know, and bringing those extreme impacts. And this is kind of from Zoom Earth showing the cone, and pretty much it's going to be going over Tampa's 125 mile an hour Category 3 hurricane. And if you look, basically, if the hurricane is right here, there's, you know, a lot of that storm surge on that eastern side of the storm. It's going to be really bad. And even, you know, even if it was a bit further south, you know, then you would have Sarasota possibly getting a ton of storm surge. Cape Coral area, that area would still be getting a ton of storm surge too, but some of the winds would be offshore in the Tampa area. That would be better, but it looks like the track right now pretty much going on the north side of Tampa in St. Petersburg, those areas. Yeah, it's really bad. And the HAFS A model is actually showing this is actually way too weak from what we're seeing right now. This is really underestimating the system, but the idea is it's showing it weakens down, probably an eye wall replacement cycle, and then it's able to re-intensify. And this is you know, Tuesday night, tomorrow night, really. But then as it approaches Florida, the models are showing it weakens dramatically because of that shear, down to, you know, 963 millibars, which is still a pretty intense hurricane. And then once it goes over Florida, then it, you know, of course, it really weakens. It becomes more of an extratropical system. So that's the idea, that hopefully it weakens dramatically, but still the impacts are going to be extreme, especially because of the size of the storm. The storm surge will still be really bad. Now, the HWRF seems to be showing this way more intense, and I think this is probably more of an accurate picture, and it shows it weakening, you know, and it only goes out this far, but for now, but it does show weakening, but it's still a pretty intense storm on the HWRF. Pretty much still going to be an intense hurricane, you know, it could be a major hurricane still as it comes in towards Florida, but hopefully it weakens more due to the shear. But this is showing, this is the latest, you know, cone, and it's showing that, yeah, it's going to be a major hurricane all the way to Florida, and then there's hurricane warnings in place for, a big section of the west coast of Florida going inland, and then hurricane watches along the east coast of Florida. So this is going to be a hurricane all the way through Florida, apparently, and you even have hurricane watches down in southwestern Florida, the Florida Keys, tropical storm warnings across the Florida Big Bend, and, South Florida, and those tropical storm watches go all the way up from, southeastern Florida near Miami all the way up into, coastal Georgia and South Carolina. There could still be some strong winds as the system, pushes out into the Atlantic. But the storm surge is really the major problem along the coast. This is life-threatening storm surge, catastrophic storm surge, 10 to 15 feet in the Tampa Bay area. That's not good. And this extends even further south, towards Sarasota. So not just the Tampa Bay region, but, anybody along the coast has to get away from this, because this part of the coast is, really flat. And what happens is the Gulf right here is actually really shallow, so that really allows that water to really, rise when you get a big hurricane pushing through. And this is kind of an interactive map from the NHC, and the link for this will be in the description. But this is showing for St. Petersburg, Tampa, that whole area along the coast, you could have over 9 feet of storm surge. Even, the coast where Clearwater is, even, going further up along the coast. So, this whole red area is up to 12 feet of storm surge. This purple area is over 12 feet of storm surge. And we have, this goes all the way down the coast, really over 9 feet, even into the Cape Coral area. So this is a very serious situation with the storm surge. So we have the storm surge, the strong winds, and also the rain is going to be a problem. There's a moderate risk of flooding today for South Florida, and then a slight risk going into Wednesday morning, and then day 3 through Thursday morning. So pretty much have a moderate risk of flooding for a big section of the Florida Peninsula, from even as far north as Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa Bay, this huge section. And this is just from all the rain. And this is the NHC showing the total rainfall 6 to 8 inches, maybe localized areas 8 to 12 inches across the central Florida Peninsula area, and then further south a bit less rain, 4 to 6 inches. So there's that. But here's another thing. This map is from the National Weather Service Southern Region Tropical webpage, and this was from there was a link to this from the local National Weather Service office in Tampa Bay, and this is the link for this will also be in the description. This map kind of shows there's a potential for wind greater than 110 miles an hour in this purple area, and this is Spring Hill, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, Port Charlotte, Cape Coral, all in this area for basically major hurricane force winds. And so this is, very destructive winds. So this is where the most destructive winds will be, and that's the wind. The wind is a big problem, but also that storm surge is going to be a part of that. And so, yeah, make sure you're prepared for those strong winds too, because those extend even further inland, going 74 to 110 miles an hour all the way across the Florida Peninsula. Orlando is going to be apparently in, hurricane force winds So this goes pretty far inland. Even Jacksonville might be able to see hurricane force winds. Daytona Beach, all these areas, under hurricane watches and warnings. And then outside of that, you have the 58 to 73 mile an hour winds. Still will cause problems, but not quite as bad. And then the tropical storm force winds over pretty much most of the state. So, and then that kind of goes along the coast into Georgia and South Carolina. But, Florida is, especially this area in the purple, is where the worst winds are going to be happening. This is the wind, according to the NAM model, is showing 107 to 120 mile an hour winds coming in towards Florida. And this is, I think that it's going to be more than this, but let's actually change it to the wind gusts. These are basically the winds you're probably going to see. These are winds almost up to 150 miles an hour around the storm. So this is coming in towards the west coast of Florida. This is definitely serious. And then, but the idea is that hopefully this gets sheared down so it doesn't, hit as a Cat 4 or anything like that, But still, a Category 3 is a really bad thing for the Tampa area because of the storm surge especially. And because there's a lot of people in this part of Florida. And then, even further inland, it's going to be causing problems with the wind and the flooding from the rain. Now, over the next 5 days, pretty much you could see up to a foot of rain in some of these areas. But, Ocala, Florida could see 8 to 10 inches probably. And then we have pretty much almost a foot of rain in a lot of these places. Even Jacksonville could see 9 to 10 inches. St. Augustine, 10 to 12 inches. Gainesville, 8 to 10 inches. So, on the north side of this storm, there's going to be a track of really heavy rain, And so that's why there's that risk for flooding there. But yeah, this is definitely pretty intense, and the H4 seems to be more accurate with the wind, way more accurate than some of the other models, and not making this too weak of a system. This seems to be more accurate from the H4 model, and it's showing pretty much those winds. Even the pressure isn't low enough, so it could be even stronger than this. So that's the frightening thing, and it is showing a Cat 5 for the next 12 hours or so, and then it does start weakening down, but it's still a Category 4, still pretty intense, and it kind of fluctuates a bit, but notice it's getting bigger. It's getting a lot bigger than what it was previously, so you have a much bigger wind field for this hurricane. And then, once it reaches Florida, the winds are down to Category 3 level. The winds are about 125 miles an hour right there, so that's pretty much what the NHC was showing. So that's, a Category 3, but it's really bad because this is showing it just kind of northwestern Tampa. So all the strongest winds are going to be shoving water into the Tampa Bay area. So that's why it's that worst case scenario in terms of the storm surge and the wind, especially the storm surge. And then it still has strong winds pushing in more inland, but it's going to be more in gusts because of friction. And then out on the other side of Florida, it's still a hurricane, still some of those really strong winds. As it looks like it starts to turn into more of an extratropical system. If you notice the kind of warm front here, cold front there, starting to show up. So it does become an extratropical system after it hits Florida, but really the main thing is the west coast of Florida, especially going to see that, just catastrophic levels of storm surge, and the, possibly some really extreme winds extreme wind damage, and then those hurricane force winds extend even further inland with this hurricane. You know, so there's going to be power outages if you're further inland. Just be prepared for those damaging winds, power outages. Make sure you have, you know, the like non-refrigerated food, water, all that stuff. And you know, if you're anywhere in Florida, just make sure you're prepared for the hurricane and follow all the instructions given by local officials, you know, especially the evacuation orders and all that. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone out.